Most people think shot composition is about rules. Rule of thirds, golden ratio, place the subject here, don't place it there. That's not what composition really is. When someone watches your shot, they don't get to choose what they look at. You already decided that. If the viewer is deciding where to look, the shot is already failing. Shot composition is the arrangement of elements inside a frame. But more importantly, it's the relationship between those elements. Not what's in the frame, what those things are doing to each other. This idea didn't start with film. It existed long before cameras. Painters had one frame to tell a whole story. One image had to communicate power, conflict, emotion, movement, all at once. Film just gave that idea motion. Every well-composed shot answers 3 questions, whether you're aware of it or not. Where does the eye land first? Where does it move next? And what does it feel while doing that? That's composition. And before this ends, I'll show you where you can get the practical scene design framework serious directors rely on to build this kind of control into any scene, so you can apply it to your own work. But first, you need to see how it actually works. Every frame has a first stop, the place your eye goes before you think. That's a point. Points don't need to be big. They need to be clear. A single figure in empty space, a bright object in a dark frame, a face surrounded by silence. Wide shots use points to remove confusion. When the frame is clean, the eye has no choice but to land exactly where you want it. Close shots use points to dominate attention. The smallest detail can dominate the entire image if everything else steps back. This is where things like the rule of thirds or the golden triangle come in. Not as rules, as tools. They give you predictable places where the eye naturally wants to land. But the rule isn't what matters. Control is. Once the eye lands, it wants to move. That's where lines come in. Lines don't decorate a frame. They guide it. Vertical lines feel strong and dominant. Horizontal lines feel calm and stable. Diagonal lines feel tense, unstable, alive. Hallways, roads, architecture, weapons, even bodies. They all create invisible arrows inside the frame. Lines decide flow, and flow decides how long someone stays inside your shot. If your frame doesn't guide the eye, it leaks attention. But sometimes, lines don't just guide you, they trap you. Look at 1917. The trenches aren't just production design, they're compositional control. The rigid parallel walls eliminate lateral movement. There is no visual escape, no alternate path for the eye. You move forward because the frame leaves you no other choice. Sam Mendes has spoken about how the trenches were built to the exact length of the dialogue.
We had to measure every step of the journey. We built over a mile of trenches.
If the scene ran longer, the trench had to be longer. They rehearsed the walking pace before construction even began.
The scene has to be the exact length of the land, and the land cannot be longer than the scene, and the scene cannot be longer than the land. And so you have to rehearse every line of dialogue on location.
When we were digging, we were still doing rehearsals, we were still staking out the trench lengths so that we could hone in the exact distances that we needed.
It's a highly choreographed piece, so every inch has to be accounted for.
It's meant to make you feel that you are in the trenches with those 2 young men.
You're always moving forward. You never go back.
That means the architecture wasn't decoration. It dictated movement. The movement dictated pacing. The pacing dictated tension. The lines don't just lead Blake and Schofield, they confine them. And because they confine them, they confine you. That's not neutral framing. That's compositional pressure. And sometimes that pressure isn't created by walls. It's created by scale. Think about Dune Part 2. There are moments where the frame doesn't confine the character. It overwhelms him. Sometimes the character dominates the image. Sometimes he's reduced to a small figure swallowed by the environment. The frame decides who has power. The frame decides who feels isolated. The frame decides what matters. Those compositions aren't decorative. They're taking a side. They're designing hierarchy. And when the frame takes a side, the audience doesn't have to choose what to feel. It's already been decided. Now compare that to a very common beginner mistake. Everything is evenly framed. The background is fully visible. Nothing is hidden. Nothing is emphasized. The shot may be technically correct, but the frame refuses to take a side. And the moment neutrality enters the frame, narrative control, emotional weight, and attention collapse. This is the problem most filmmakers are actually struggling with, even if they can't quite name it yet. They're not composing badly, they're composing neutrally. And neutral framing is the silent killer of storytelling. Because when everything feels equally important, nothing actually is. Stories don't live in neutrality. They live in contrast, emphasis, pressure, and hierarchy. Every strong film you admire understands this instinctively. Now, here's where it gets real. Understanding control is one thing, but designing it into a scene is another place most filmmakers struggle with. It's easy to recognize good framing when you see it. It's much harder to sit down with your own scene and decide what the frame should actually do. And if you're not sure how to frame your scenes with real control, we've put together something to help. It's called the Scene Framing Control Guide, a system for controlling attention, emotion, and meaning in every scene. It walks you through how to frame your scenes so you can lock attention, control how your audience feels, and make your message land clearly, without you guessing, freezing, or defaulting to neutral frames that say nothing. Click the link in the description to download it for free. Here's the part most people miss. Points decide where attention starts. Lines decide where attention goes. When you combine them, the viewer stops choosing. They follow. This is the foundation of shot composition. Not beauty, not symmetry, but control. You're not making pretty frames. You're designing attention. In the next episode, we'll look at structure, why some frames feel calm, why others feel tense, and how order and chaos are designed, not accidental. Remember to like the video so it reaches more filmmakers. Subscribe to Breadfruit Studios so you don't miss the next episode in the series. And in the comments, tell us, do you struggle more with where to place the camera or what to include in the frame? Now you see how attention is controlled. In the next episode, we design the structure behind it.